Hello, hello, hello. It is the afternoon of day one, Monday, 9th of January. This is Burnout. It's been a little bit of a different morning, not quite what I had expected. I was going to go through my story with you now. I did that earlier in one of the slots where we were missing a guest. Um, I'm gonna give you some real openness about just how I'm feeling at the moment and what I've kind of had to do to get myself in the right frame of mind for this hour. Then I want to talk you through some stats. I don't have all of the answers to the stats. I have some opinions. I have a perspective, but I don't have all of the answers when it comes to the stats and what's there. Maybe some of you do, and I'd be really interested in your thoughts and opinions on those. And then at 3 o'clock, I will be back. So I may be kind of with you now for kind of half hour, 45 minutes or so. And then I'm back at 3 with the fabulous Kristen Harcourt. So I want to say a huge thank you to Michelle Yeoman for joining me first thing this morning. We seem to have lost Chandra. I don't know where he's gone. And unfortunately, Louise had to go and pick up her daughter from school. She got a call to say her daughter was poorly. So obviously wishing that her daughter is okay, nothing too serious. And Louise and I are trying to reschedule her time for later in the week so that we can get that done. But I'm for those of you that do know me, I'm nothing but honest. I'm kicking my slippers off so I can put my feet on my kickboard. But I want to. I think when let's do a bit of kind of brutal honesty, and then I'll start to share some of these stats and have a conversation. So this campaign has been in the diary for months. I've done lots of planning around it. It took a lot of time to get the details sorted, social links, all sorts of stuff. LinkedIn has been a little bit funny about allowing me to schedule all of the events anyway. So so I've only been able to, at the moment, share the events for today and tomorrow. LinkedIn's having a bit of a weird thing and won't let me schedule the lives for Wednesday or Thursday. Even though my creator manager was fully aware of this, knew how many interviews there would be and all those sorts of things. So I'm talking to LinkedIn behind the scenes, firstly, to find out why that was happening. So that adds a little bit of stress, a little bit of, not even stress, but a little bit of a challenge that I didn't necessarily need last week. Lots of people have then messaged me over the course of the last week to say, where can we find all of the details? Thought this was going on a week. Am I missing something? No, everything's going to be live. I just can't schedule them. And again, I'd put that out as a message, but as happens with social media algorithms, not everything is being seen as it should be. So that was fine. And I genuinely thought I had planned for every possible eventuality. So even if the occasion arose when my internet went down, I've got lots of different backups to allow me to still have the conversations without internet connection. I thought I kind of dealt with as many plan Bs as possible. What I wasn't expecting was a no-show and then a last-minute cancellation on day one of a campaign that I'm hugely passionate about and wanting to ensure that really, really makes a difference this week. And I totally get that things happen, but I also get, I've also been at the point for the last maybe hour or so of what the hell am I doing? Clearly this doesn't matter. This isn't important. Who am I to think this would make a difference anyway? That's kind of where I've been. Now, I've clearly given myself a talking to. I think where I'd gone to that place so quickly, firstly, because that has been my default since my burnout, right? Before that, anything I'd have just, we'll just get over it, right? We'll get over it. We'll find a different way of doing it. It wouldn't even have been, it would have been a non-issue, an absolute non-issue. But I do have a lot less patience and a lot less understanding. And I can go to a point of panic now very, very quickly, which isn't my norm, right? That's not my pre-burnout norm. And I'm sharing that with you today whilst we're talking about burnout. And lots of other things may come up throughout the course of this week that just make me think, oh yeah, I just kind of want to share that. Because that can, that can cause me a lot of issues and a lot of energy. Now, if you join me very, very first thing this morning, I said that I'd done everything possible to manage my energy this week, right? I've got my lunches prepared. I've planned all of my exercise. I've got all of my outfits all lined up. I've done everything that I possibly can to ensure that my energy stays high all week, right? This is an important campaign. It means a lot to me. It means a lot that to me that we can continue to talk about this and raise awareness and do everything that we need to do. For whatever reason, I hadn't thought about what the hell happens if nobody shows up. And I think in terms of that, I've then been like, oh, like I should have done it differently, right? I should have pre-recorded everything and then gone live with it all. And then everything, all that I've had to do was schedule, and then I could have been more active in the comments. So it's like a learning as I'm going. But I want to share this because I think sometimes when we see these sorts of things, it's just like, we see things at the surface, everything looks like it's going okay, and like we just cope with it. And I have, like, for the last hour just been feeling pretty crap. So I'm back, right? I've had myself a little bit of my Ayurvedic fudge. I've drank some water. I've danced about a bit, to kind of shift my energy, and I'm back. But I wanted to share that because I think it's important. Like, not everything goes to plan. And whilst I thought I had done everything that I possibly could to allow for things maybe not entirely going to plan, as I said, I hadn't even considered what if guests don't show up. And now I'm thinking, well, you're just a bloody idiot. But stuff happens, right? Stuff happens and we'll get over it. I'm still here. And we're still going. And even, right, and again, I make no apologies for sort of that. Even if you have to put up with just me talking to you during every single slot of this all week, I will find something burnout related to talk to you about in every single one of these slots so that we can keep talking about it. So I'm going to pop this hashtag back in this box, because whatever you are sharing this week, whatever you are talking about this week, it would help me if I could type, but I want you to be sharing this hashtag, sharing stories, sharing examples, sharing everything that you possibly can. We're talking about burnout, what we can do about it, how we can prevent it, how we can banish it. And if I do get more guests of the week, they're also going to be sharing their stories and their learnings, and what we can do to change it from there. So there we go. That's my little bit of, hopefully, a little bit of an understanding. So, like, not everything is going to go to plan. That's okay. Sometimes you're going to feel a bit crappy when things don't go to plan. That's okay, right? Pull yourself up. I'll put my big girl's pants on, and we are off. So I want to share, as I said, some statistics with you. Whenever it comes to data, and I've been wary about data throughout my entire career, the data that we look at, the data that we present, is obviously relevant at the point in which the data is secured. And whatever you look at, so do a Google search now on burnout stats, burnout data, you will see loads and loads of different reports from loads and loads of different organizations that will be giving you probably very, very different information, particularly if where the information has come from has been pulled together really from a survey, right? If we're asking completely different groups of people information, we're going to end up with very, very different stats. And if we're not asking, if we're asking similar questions or the same questions, a lot of that is going to have changed based on the people that we're asking and based on that particular moment in time. But there are some, I suppose, some scary bits and pieces that I want to be sharing with you, right? I think we need to understand some of these stats. So my career, most of my career to date was spent in HR. Michelle that I interviewed this morning is HR, and there are a few other people that I'm going to be speaking to this week that are HR professionals or ex-HR professionals. And some of the data last week, so the data in today's live where I'm talking about the data. Most of the information that I'm referring to, if not pretty much all actually, of the information that I am referring to comes from a McKinsey Women in the Workplace 2022 report and the Forbes Women at Work report for 2022. So that's where the information. So as I'm talking about stats with you today, that's the information. That's where the data has come from for both of those reports. So it's from the McKinsey Women in the Workplace 2022 report, and it's not Forbes at all. It's the Deloitte Women at Work. Deloitte Women at Work. Yes. I'm like, get yourself sorted out. There's Deloitte, there's Forbes, and there's McKinsey. Deloitte, Forbes, and McKinsey. There we go. Women at Work, Forbes report. There we go. I'm back on it now. Moment of brain fog, forgive me. So that's the data that I'm referring to from these three reports. If you are looking at data from with different numbers, different information, it's likely that we are looking at different bits of information. And again, if you've got different stats, as I said, there are hundreds of thousands of different data points out there. Please feel free to share. But these are the ones that I go to the most. As I said, my background started in HR. Most of my career has been spent in either the HR OD type space, an OD, organizational development. And last year it was Forbes that reported that 98% of HR professionals were at a point of burnout. And I've talked about this a lot with many other people in the HR space. My good friend Laura Mazzullo from Eastside Staffing, she and I have had many conversations about this over the last couple of years. And I think when we're talking about 98% of HR having experienced burnout or having experienced symptoms of burnout, I think we have to be looking at the profession and asking the question why that is happening. Again, if you've watched any of the earlier interviews today, I've talked a lot about this moral injury. Michelle Yeoman mentioned having these boundaries in place, understanding her own values and what was important to her. And I think if we look at HR as a sector and as a whole, actually a lot of what we see may be considered immoral or unethical. And whilst we're trying to fix that, we are, as HR professionals, genuinely trying to fix that. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't cause an issue for us. I also think there is still, sadly, this gap when it comes to HR looking after themselves. And I know lots of people, Julie Turney, that I'm going to be speaking to later on this week, really focuses on HR for HR. And I've done that through earlier points of my own business journey. But I still find that HR professionals are still very, very reluctant to say, this is the support that I need for me as an individual. The focus is still on everybody else within the business and everybody else within the organization. But when it comes to HR as individuals, there seems a lot more either reluctance or resistance to say, yeah, I need some support, I need some coaching, I need some mentoring, I want, therapy or whatever it is it may be. And I think that's adding to this 98% that we see. And ultimately, if we do want to create healthy workplaces where people are able to thrive, if leaders are still placing all of that people responsibility at the door of HR have to have the right support in place to allow them to create these psychologically safe workplaces. I work with a number of HR professionals, senior HR leaders on a one-to-one coaching basis. And throughout the course of the last year, I was working with 6 HR professionals towards the end of last year. 5 out of 6 were off work with serious illnesses related to burnout, relating to workplace stress. 5 out of 6 people that I was working with. Now, I'm not saying that that necessarily creates, or necessarily highlights the true picture, but we have to question why 5 out of 6 people that I was working with towards the end of last year are off work with serious stress. And a lot of that has been because during the pandemic, HR, and particularly here in the UK, a lot of HR teams were dealing with a lot of furlough. They were dealing with resignations. They were dealing with contract changes, downsizing, new policies, managers and leaders wanting new policies in place. We were also seeing, as Rishi, as he was as Chancellor then, Rishi Sunak, all of the changes really when it came to the workplace and furlough schemes and all of that kind of stuff, all of that was being referred to on Fridays at 5 o'clock. And so the HR professionals that had already been working all week found themselves Fridays at 5 having to watch the announcements. A lot of HR professionals that I know of were then being contacted during those announcements by leaders and managers within their organizations to say, okay, so what does this mean for us? They're like, I'm watching the same announcement as you for the very first time. And then they were having to spend all weekend either creating policies, processes, procedures, or payments ready for announcements to go out for the rest of the workforce, the rest of the people within the organization on Mondays. And hey, Michelle's saying, yeah, that was me. And it was so stressful, right? Lots of people were going through that. And we could argue, well, of course, that's HR's role, but we were not allowing HR the space to have any proper downtime. And HR, a lot of the HR people that I was speaking to, even though, those that were parents, those with caring responsibilities, that, even those without any of that were just working full time, it was almost like they weren't allowed to, or didn't have the space to, the mental capacity to say, actually, I'm also going through this pandemic along with everybody else, because they were just on this hamster wheel doing everything that they possibly could to help all of the people, all of the leaders, all of the organization translate all of this news that was coming out. And it was just go, 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 go. And HR didn't really get the kind of space to say, oh, actually, we are in a pandemic too. This is the space that I need. This is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm worried about. This is what I'm concerned about. This is what I need. And then as organizations started to open up again, there was a lot of pressure on HR to be like dealing with everything else. And again, some of the clients that I was working with last year, it was like they went from pandemic 2020 and 2021, and then straight into, right, changes, new policies, new procedures, new working, new, this is what we're going to be doing full time, new handbooks, new this, new that, new the other. And I'm not surprised then that throughout last year, 2022, we saw 98% of HR professionals experiencing burnout, because not once have we allowed the time or space for them to say, do you know what, it's been a really tough couple of years and I'm feeling bloody knackered. We've continued to put more and more pressure. Leaders have continued to put more and more pressure on their HR teams. And as I said, 5 out of 6 clients that I was working with towards the end of last year, off work, serious illness, with burnout, because they have just been going and going and going and going for far too long. And nobody has said to them, what do you need? Whilst the HR people have been focused on everybody else, nobody has said to them, what is it that you need? And unfortunately, it's taken its toll. So 98% of HR, that's the first stat that I want to kind of share with you. I can't find the latest accurate stats, and it probably sounds a little bit wrong to lump these in together, but I am going to, where we're also seeing climbing stats, and again, probably not unsurprising, and we're seeing more of this within the UK, but I cannot find the reference of the stats. I'm not going to present you a stat necessarily, but I want to talk to you about healthcare and educators. So people working in healthcare, doctors, nurses, anybody in healthcare, and also those in education. We're also seeing those two sectors experiencing really, really high levels of burnout. And again, I am not surprised with everything that we have to look at. So if we look at, again, if we refer to burnout as chronic workplace stress, right? We're saying that burnout is chronic workplace stress. If we look at it from that perspective, is it any wonder that those working in education and health are experiencing chronic workplace stress? No. If we look at it from a moral injury perspective, where we are seeing unethical and immoral working practices, poor leadership, poor communication, is it any wonder that those in healthcare and education are experiencing burnout? We can say no. And also, I think if we look at, I'm working with a number of consultants and registrars from the NHS on a coaching perspective. And again, what I'm hearing from them is, I don't feel that I'm able to be myself, because this is all of the red tape, or these are all the processes, these are all of the procedures. And a lot of them are working with me in terms of like, help me find my core values, help me be the best registrar, the best consultant that I can be, because I feel lost in everything that's happening, and I'm not feeling like myself. And if we look at both of those sectors, I think it's very, very similar. You know, I know lots of educators who have left education. Some of them have set up their own kind of private tutoring. Some of them have gone on to do completely different things. But again, we're looking at, I'm not able to teach in the way that I want to teach. I'm not able to deliver the work in the way that I want to deliver it, because of all of this red tape, all of these processes, all of these procedures, all of the boxes that I've got to tick. And when I look at, I suppose, you know, we're talking, what, 10 years? My sons are 22. My youngest stepson is 12. My youngest stepson has got an app now, which my sons didn't have 10 years ago. But there's an app that both his dad and his mum can log on to. And for every single lesson, his behaviour is being commented on this app. And the points that he's receiving for every lesson, or the points that are being deducted for every lesson, are being recorded on this app. And they can see in real time after every lesson how he's behaving and what it is that he's doing. You can also see all of his test results, and you can also see all of the homework that's on there. And that's on a daily basis. And you could do it lesson by lesson. And again, I just want, like, how much time is being taken up with teachers. I don't know if it's support assistants. I don't know who's logging this information in, but somebody's having to do that. I would think at the detriment of being able to spend time on a one-to-one basis with the students in the schools. Now, I haven't done for the last kind of 6 months or so, but for many years, I have mentored in secondary schools students that have been classed as having behavioural issues. Really, all they've needed is just someone to spend some time with them, have a chat with them, and get them a bit organised. That's really all they've needed. And again, if we are taking some of that, well, I don't mean this to get all political, but what I want to showcase is, when we're talking about everything that we've been talking about so far, right? So this moral injury, chronic workplace stress, and a loss of self. If teachers are really not able to do the jobs that they need to be doing, because they're having to spend all of this time putting in information on an app that isn't actually helping the students at all, it's just giving the parents a real life, you know, your child won a point today, I think we've kind of lost the point when it comes to education. Likewise, with those that I'm working with in healthcare, when they are saying to me, you know, we haven't got the resources, the time, the equipment, everything that we need in order to be able to be delivering the best patient care, then I think we can see why within these sectors we are getting to the point of burnout. And again, these are things that I want to be highlighting, talking about, and share, because something has to change. If it doesn't, we are going to end up with some serious issues, but something has to change. Next act is that, and I'd be really interested in all of your views on this one, because I think this is the one that has me kind of scratching my head more than any of the other stats that I've seen. And this is that 77% of execs, so executives in organizations, 77% of them are leaving their organizations to go and work in organizations that prioritize well-being. So let me say that again. 77% of execs within organizations are leaving their organizations due to burnout to go and work in organizations that have more of a focus on well-being. And the reason I think that this one makes me scratch my head so much is, if we are saying 77% of execs are leaving to go and work somewhere else, right? Because they want a focus on well-being. If the execs cannot create psychologically safe cultures within their organizations that allow a focus on well-being, right? If those at the very, very top of the organization cannot ensure that their organizations are focused on well-being already, what kind of hope do all of the rest of us have that aren't at that exec level within that organization to create psychologically safe workplaces that do not cause burnout? So I'd be really, really interested in your views and thoughts on that one, because I kind of like, we can also, like, we all have to take responsibility. I spoke about this first thing this morning. Michelle and I spoke about this first thing at 10 o'clock this morning. And I think Michelle Yeoman and I were really both saying the same thing, right? It's leaders and organizations, and then it's us as individuals, right? We've all got to be working together to ensure that we are doing everything that we can to eliminate and banish burnout within our organizations. But if 77% of execs are leaving to go to organizations that focus on well-being, we've got an even bigger issue, right? Because clearly the execs want psychologically safe workplaces that are less stressful or more moral or more ethical or more driven, or, and any of that kind of stuff. If they're leaving to go and work at organizations that are already healthy, what then happens to everybody else within the organizations where these execs are leaving from? Because I can only imagine that it's got to be a really, really bloody toxic culture if execs are saying, I'm going somewhere else, and then everyone else that's left in the organization is like, well, what do we do now? Now, I mentioned earlier when I focused on my story, which I think, what was I, 11 o'clock? I think so, the 11 o'clock session, where I was talking about my story with you this morning. Within that, it's like I knew that I was shielding a lot of my team from a lot of the toxicity that was going on within the organization, right? I know that I was protecting a lot of my team from that. So perhaps a lot of people at different levels of the organization, perhaps they're not seeing all of the toxicity. I do know that in a lot of cases, actually, it's been kind of, the closer that I've got to the table, and definitely when I got my seat at the table, that was the point that, like, this is the worst place to work ever, right? Whereas actually when I'm going to say just doing my job, and I don't mean that, hopefully you'll kind of get the gist of what I'm saying, but it was almost like when I was just doing my job and I was able to make, just do all this stuff and do all of the bits that I loved and all that kind of stuff. Actually, it was just a hell of a lot, it was just a lot easier. But the higher I climbed and the closer I got to the table, and then eventually got my seat at the table, it was like, this is toxic. But that has to be rippling through somewhere within the organization. For me, as I said, I definitely protected a lot of my team from that, but I couldn't protect all of my team from that, because actually some of my heads of needed to know what was going on at that level. And then, of course, they were then shielding some of their team members from some of the other stuff. So it was, it was kind of the shielding that was taking place in this kind of ripple and cascade effect. So quite possibly a lot of the people at the front line that could quite simply come in, do their job, deliver the job to the very, very best of their abilities, have what they needed. Like, for them, probably didn't see half of that stuff that was happening. But I do think if we've got 77% of execs that are having these issues, we do have a really, really big issue. And I want to say that, again, I think a lot of this relies on leaders understanding who it is that they are at their core. Because if leaders truly understand who they are, and I'm not talking tick box leadership, right, where you just attend a course, tick all these boxes, and it's like, okay, yeah, now I'm a great leader. Genuinely looking at you as a leader, what's important to you, what are your core values, what are your core strengths, what's your core reason for working where you're working, what's your core reason for doing what you're doing. When we can get clear on all of that kind of stuff, create the necessary boundaries, and then take time for ourselves, that's when we start to create positive ripples, right? We create positive ripples of change and have a really positive impact across our organizations. So 77% of execs, for me, tells a much bigger story of the reality in our workplaces. And I'm seeing lots and lots of stats about well-being being like almost the number one priority for lots of employers in 2023. I'm going to be really, really pissed off if the focus on well-being for 2023 is more yoga class. And I'm not knocking yoga, right? I'm a qualified yoga teacher. I do my yoga every day. I'm not knocking yoga. What I'm saying is yoga, free fruit Fridays, all of that kind of stuff. That is not what creating healthy workplaces is all about. Healthy workplaces really, can people be themselves at work? Can people speak openly at work? Can people speak honestly at work? Are people supported? Is it an inclusive organization? Is it a safe organization? Are people paid fairly? Do we have the right amount of people doing the work? Do people understand why they're doing work? There are all of those different factors. And if the focus of well-being this year is going to be on more exercise classes, more gym memberships, and a few more benefits, we've missed the boat with it. And burnout numbers are going to continue to rise. And again, I don't want to knock anybody here, but over the last few years, I've been a judge on a number of different panels when it comes to HR awards and accreditations. And I have to look at it with I have to look at those with a very, very open mind. Compared to where these organisations were and what they have now started to do and what they've implemented, is what they're doing great for their people? That's kind of how I have to look at it. But I think a lot of the time, particularly when I've been judging for the well-being categories, what I see are a lot of organisations that are submitting awards for things that really should just be the absolute baseline foundation level of what a healthy organisation looks like. And so I think we kind of need to get our heads around, like, if we think this is award-winning stuff, it's almost like I think we've got to, stop awards for a year, right? And really just focus on what is right for our organisation and what is right for our people. And if we can, if you can get a few gold stars off the back of it, great. But I think we've really got to be looking at what would a genuinely healthy, safe workplace look like, and how can we create that? As I said, because I think for some people it's very, very baseline, and whilst that may be a huge leap from where you have been to where you are going, we have a burnout issue, right? Burnout is not a mental health condition. I'm going to say that before I kind of say the next thing. But we're getting close to this burnout epidemic. We're past probably the point of a mental health epidemic. We've got to be creating changes within our workplaces. And if 70% of execs are experiencing issues as well, I think that's paints a much darker picture of what the focus needs to be for 2023 and beyond. So I want you all to kind of have a think about that one. I also want to, so let's kind of, and I get asked quite a lot, actually, why do you focus more on women? It's not that I don't work with men, but I think I understand a lot more of the challenges that a lot of women face within the workplace, and particularly when it comes to our need to want to, feeling like we've constantly got to prove our worth in order to do things. And I think this is impacting our mental health. But if you look at I made some comments about this report last kind of October and November, but the McKinsey Women in the Workplace 2022 report. It starts to talk about the pipeline for leaders, management and leadership progression in organisations anyway. And what we're seeing is that actually for a lot of women within organisations, managers are the barrier to a lot of women even getting the progression that they need. It seems that though, I think it's, what is it? So for every 100 men who are promoted to entry-level roles to management positions, only 87% are promoted. And then it goes on to say that only 82%, yeah, 82, we're talking about 100, aren't we? But for every 100 men who are promoted from entry level to manager, only 87 women are promoted and only 82 women of colour are promoted. So this is from the McKinsey Women in the Workplace 2022 report. So then it goes on to say that as a result, men significantly outnumber women at the manager level and women can never catch up. So it says there are simply too few women to promote to senior leadership positions. And we see a lot of this. Again, you know, I wrote about this a lot last year, the number of women that are in FTSE 500, FTSE 250 organisations. A lot. I was really shocked at some of even just the quotes that was, you know, there seems to be this kind of one and done mentality when it comes to getting women into these top roles. But this report also then goes on to say that more women leaders are then leaving their companies. So to put the scale of the problem in perspective, for every woman at the director level who gets promoted to the next level, so from director to the next level, for every one woman that happens to, 2 women directors are choosing to leave their company. When it gets to the point of burnout, then what we're seeing is that 43% of women leaders are saying that they are burned out, compared with only 31% of men at their level. So basically, we've got less women getting to that senior level in the first place. The women that are doing are then leaving at a faster rate than the men that get there. And then we're seeing 43% of women leaders that are burned out compared to 31% of men. We have an issue when it comes to burnout, and this is causing issues when it comes to the workplace today. It's causing issues when it comes to the pipeline. And again, there's research and statistics out there that tell us that the more diverse, and I'm not just talking gender balance, you know, I'm talking all across the diversity, what do I want to say, spectrum, or every single category. But the more diverse the top team within an organization, the greater the performance of that organization. So if you're thinking it's one and done, whether that's one woman, one black woman, one black man, one person of the LGBTQ plus community, you know, whatever it may be, one and done is not going to get you the performance that you need. And so I think if you are only looking at the diversity of your organization from a financial perspective, it makes financial sense to have greater diversity in your top team. But if it is not a psychologically, emotionally, or physically safe workplace, if it's not a safe table to be sat at, I wonder if that's where some of these 77% of execs are then leaving from. And again, I've never believed that we can look at any of these things in isolation. We've got to start understanding really what is the cause of burnout within each of our organizations, right? It might be very different in one organization compared to the other. It may not be. And I think what you'll see from a lot of the stories that we're going to be talking about from people this week and with the experiences that they've had, actually, it's a very similar experience pretty much for all of us. But is there a different cause within each of the organizations that we work within? I think we've really got to understand what's causing burnout. What can we do to prevent it? How can we ensure that we're banishing it within our organizations without it feeling and being and looking like a tick box exercise, right? We've really got to get to the bottom of this. And if you are one of these leaders that is focusing on well-being as a priority for 2023, I want you to get really clear on, before you start to implement anything, what do you mean by well-being within your organization? That's got to be the first question, right? What do you mean by well-being within your organization? Why is it important to you to be focusing on well-being? And what do you want the outcome to be? Because again, if you're just looking at burnout as a buzzword and you're going to offer a few more gym classes, your priority is not well-being. Your priority is on ticking a box to make it look like you're doing something about well-being. So why are you focused on well-being? What do you want the outcomes to be? What do you mean by well-being? And then start to create whatever it is that you need from there. And again, really, if you're just looking at scraping the surface in terms of having those foundations in place, see if you can take it up a notch, right? If well-being is genuinely a priority for you this year, you've got to be doing much more to create a difference. I'm going to leave you there. I'm going to be back at 3:00. So just over 15 minutes. I'm going to be back with Kristen Harcourt. We're going to be talking more about this topic of leaders, very possibly. But yeah, we're going to be back at 3 p.m. Kristen Harcourt. Hopefully I will see you then. Take care for now. Bye-bye.